navigation of Vancouver Island, which is really a very classic adventure. Um, this is something that's doable. It gives one a great variety of scenery, and is certainly something that a lot of people could do, and very few people do it, as we could often go days without seeing people on the west side. One of the questions was, how far is this? What's the distance around the island? And this is about 620 nautical miles from Victoria to Victoria. And if you added onto that the distance from your home base, like we did from Seattle, it brings it up to about 750 nautical miles, and is sort of equivalent, and basically, to the distance between Seattle and Salt Lake City or San Francisco. So you see, this is not a quick trip, and especially in a boat. Um, there are a number of options in terms of selecting the time. One can do this with what's called the ultra marathon, which is kind of doing it in a week. You have to have a fast boat. You have to average about 80 nautical miles a day. You can do it just sort of looking at the highlights. Again, with a fairly fast boat, and you need to do about 50 miles a day, and you can do it in 2 weeks. Or typically, this takes 3 weeks. For 22 days, you're doing about 30 or 40 nautical miles a day, and you can do it in a sailboat if you hustle. Or more typically, if you're in a smaller sailboat and want to have a better trip, take a month, and you can average 30 miles per day, and that's usually very doable. So our first Victoria Island circumnavigation we did in 4 weeks in mid-1990s, and I did this with my son Todd, and we did this together together on a Pacific Seacraft Dana 24, a small, very seaworthy sailboat. And fortunately, I was fortunate in having my son, who's a very excellent sailor, with me, and really made the trip very enjoyable for the two of us, both to be together and also to have a sailing experience. My second Vancouver Island circumnavigation occurred in a 2-week trip in 2005 with my friend Jeff. And we did this in a Nordic Tug 32. It's a very seaworthy boat. It's moderately faster than a sailboat, but moderate speed, and was very comfortable because I was inside steering. Before going, one should look up information. You can look at the atlases, look at the west side Vancouver Island booklets or publications giving you details, and study it out fully. And also looking up the ports. This is Wagoneers in 2005. Get a current copy, and see what amenities and what's available at the various sites one may stop with. The weather, of course, is all important and really a critical consideration. And the West Coast is important to review carefully because it is exposed to the ocean and a long fetch. The BC weather is very good, but one should be aware that they often overstate wind speeds, and I think they need to do that, so preparing people for the worst. But beware that they're often less than stated. Often be aware of the frequency of fog in this area and looking at these various sites. And one will notice that May has the least amount of fog, and June has a little bit more, and July more, and then you get quite a bit in August and September. So maybe May is the best for fog, but it's also cooler. So I think June or July are good options in terms of travel. There are also some generalizations about going around the island. One is that be aware that there's can be fairly rapid rapids or tidal flow in constricted areas like the Seymour Narrows we'll talk about later. Be aware that wind against the tide equals rough water, and conversely, tide with going with the tide and smooth water is important, as that reduces the wave heights considerably. There's also a so-called Venturi effect, where wind is squeezed between land masses, like in the Johnson Straits, can increase the wind velocity. Also, shallow water, less than 100 feet, equals rough water, and this can be a problem on the west coast and going between the islands as you're getting in from the ocean into the harbors. And then land projections that extend out into the ocean, like Capes of Scott and Cook, will be more wind speed because the wind needs to speed up to go around the curves. Be aware also in the summer there is a convection winds from when the landmass heats. Then you get increased wind speeds, and these are particularly from the north. Or if you have storms that often come from the south, they can create quite a lot of wind as fronts go through the area, and need to be careful about those. And then be aware that long fetches equals higher waves. So you get in the Straits of Juan de Fuca or in the Straits of Georgia, you can have higher wave heights. This creates some interesting points of view, interesting points along the trip. The Nawadi Bar we'll talk about, where you can have sometimes very large waves. Cape Scott, higher wind speeds, and Johnson Strait, because of the Venturi effect, have higher wind speeds. And Seymour Narrows, you can have because of the tidal limited distance wave speed or water speed. Or Cape Cook, around the wind going around that can be fast, and also Estevan Point. Or the speeds that can occur in long stretches, like in the Straits of Georgia, the Straits of Juan de Fuca, or again Dodd Narrows as you're going through constricted areas. So the Dodd Narrows, for example, I remember going through this is one of the first things you might encounter in leaving if you go around the usual route, which goes the inside passage first. And I recommend that because anything wrong with your boat, it's nice to find out before you get out in the ocean. So the Dodd Narrows, remember going down that with the tidal current, and it was going very fast and a lot of whirlpools, but I sped the boat through it as there was enough speed to keep the rudder under control. So that was kind of an exciting trip. It's like going down a river. The same thing can be true with Seymour Narrows, which is the north end of Vancouver Island, as you approach the Johnson Straits. And some things that they say can run up to 16 knots. And so that can be quite exciting in times. And so you'll notice a lot of boats waiting for the slack tide before going through sites like this. But whenever I've gone through it, it's been less than impressive. And here you see kind of whirlpools and so forth, but nothing very, very exciting. And Johnson Strait showing out here and showing the afternoon waves that are due to the convection flow. And the Nawadi Bar was kind of fearsome sounding. It's kind of like the Columbia Bar. But again, twice that I've been around, this has been kind of a nothing situation and highly anticipated, but didn't really turn out to be anything very bad. But sometimes it can be bad, as one is having this water, this wind and currents going from deep water into shallow water. And sometimes people go around the south side of that to try to reduce the potential for wave action. And the Cape Scott, this is always exciting to go around, but again, if on a nice day, it's sort of a nothing sort of situation. There are other interesting features, like you can see wildlife. You can see this black bear on the beach. One can see as one goes. One can see fishing and looking at the boats and surprising number of boats that are in the harbor these days, and surprising few number that are actually out on the water. And then there's wonderful history, there's natural beauty, there's interesting weather, and you can have some interesting communities as you go through. And then just some typical views as you travel through this area. A lot of this area is behind islands, so you're going from inland kind of passages between islands, not being exposed to the whole water. You can look for wildlife like the orca whales or with dolphins, and this is showing dolphins out in the area. And going on the inside, going up first is important, I think, like we learned on this first trip around, is we had the diesel engine conked, and we had to go into the nearest harbor, and we took the dinghy up and put the little 3 horsepower motor on it and strapped it to the side of the boat and was able to move it into the harbor without any particular difficulty. Fortunately, it was a nice quiet day. But that's good to go through the inside first. So if you have problems, there'll be people around to help you. And this is as we were tied up waiting for the diesel mechanic to come and help us figure out the problem with the motor. You can, while you're waiting, you can see a lot of nice views. And you have this interesting fishing boats and colors and showing a lot of history and a lot of corrosion in some cases. So as you say, you have interesting weather, and the evening you come into ports and it can be kind of spooky and kind of very, very atmospheric, which adds to the situation. So it was a great trip, and we're back home. We enjoyed the trip. It's always nice to get home as well. Thank you for watching.